Hey team, Katie here from Equestrian Movement, and today we are going to talk about how to ride your horse onto the bit. Today we're going to be having a look at Hunter, and as you can see him working around, he is working hollow. We can tell that he is working hollow because he is on the forehand, he's driving out from the hindquarters, his poll is high. There's no real connectedness of the action of the hindquarters through to the mouth. So we're going to talk about what it takes to get from a horse that's working hollow above the bit off the contact to a horse that is working on the bit into contact with acceptance of contact. And I'm not going to give you any cheap tricks or hacks on how to get your horse onto the bit. I am, however, going to talk to you about why I don't love those cheap tricks and those cheap hacks and why I also won't recommend using artificial aids like chambons, side reins, anything else that is going to put pressure on our horse's mouth to create a frame. And if you do, why it's going to limit your progress through your flat work. So when we're looking at a horse that is riding hollow, and we're looking at a horse that is on the forehand, we can see the balance is distributed more so onto the forehand than the hindquarters. The forwardness, so their ability to ride forward and travel, comes from them pulling with their chest and their shoulders. And when we're looking at the hind legs here, they're pushing out from behind. This is called disengaged. So when we're talking about engagement is a transfer of balance into the hindquarters with a deeper flexion of the hocks so that the balance and their carriage of their body comes from weight distribution into their haunches first, and then engaging the core, and then engaging their postural muscles so that they come up at the base of the wither, and that's what creates the roundedness of the frame and into contact. So when our horses are disengaged, it means that their balance is on the forehand. So their forwardness comes from pulling with the forehand, driving out from behind. Their balance is in their forehand, so in their shoulders and their chest, and they're engaging their underneck for balance. So you'll see horses that are traveling on the forehand also have overdeveloped underneck, and that's what we're talking about when they lack top line, because that's where the skeleton of the horse is. Your horse is going to hold its posture from its spine and then from its muscles and its muscle development. So when we're asking a horse to come rounded and through the top line, there is a significant amount of muscle development required, and it has to be correct muscle development for balance, straightness and forwardness from driving from behind, seeking the contact and elasticity of the top line for them to come up into that working frame. So when he's traveling here, obviously a big telltale sign is, his poll is high and he's hollow through his neck there, but you can see how he's using his underneck and his shoulders for his balance. So the problem then comes if all we see of what, on the bit looks like, what a working frame looks like, is the roundedness of the neck, because the roundedness of the neck comes last. The roundedness of the neck comes because they're transferring their weight into their haunches, because they are distributing their weight into their hindquarters and engaging their postural muscles. Part of engaging the postural muscles is that the neck starts to round. So there's plenty of cheap hacks and cheap tricks to get our horses to flex away into a frame, but that doesn't mean that we are actually engaging their posture. It just means that we're getting them to flex behind the bit. So it has no benefit to the horse. It makes them less sound. If you've heard of horses that go bridle lame, have lower back issues, sacroiliac issues, kissing spine, those kinds of things, is because the work that we're doing is making their neck supple enough to round their neck without strengthening and conditioning the postural muscles. So where we go wrong, if we ask for a frame through submission to the bit, then without correcting the way that our horse is holding its posture, without redistributing the weight and the balance, then what we get is a false frame. Our horse flexes away at the third vertebrae. Their nose comes behind the vertical, but their balance is still on the forehand and in their underneck muscle carriage, and their hindquarters are still disengaged. So even though he's got a rounded neck, his back is still hollow because he's not engaging his hindquarters, he's not engaging his top line, he's not redistributing his balance through his hindquarters through his top line to contact. The balance is still in the forehand. And so this is what we're trying to achieve when we're riding, is that we're engaging and stacking their posture for soundness to carry us. That's our basics. So we've got straightness and balance. But then if you want to progress through the training scale and all you've done is taught frame by getting submission to the bit, then you have no way of communicating more squat to develop collected movements, and most likely you're also going to lose your brakes. So if you've used bit pressure to get submission to the bit to create a false frame, how does your horse differentiate between your frame aid and your aid to ask him to slow down for downward transitions, for halt transitions, and for rein back? So we basically ruin our communication by trying to get our horse to hold a frame that is only to do with the roundness of the neck instead of the stacking of the posture. So we can have another look at that. So it goes deeper, and you can, it's a telltale sign of when the contact has created the frame instead of, now there's, that's a more classical picture of what we'll see riders in prelim doing. You would think, he's on the bit, but his nose is behind the vertical and he's flexed away at the third vertebrae. So it means that, and you can see it in his balance is still on the forehand and his bum high. The engagement is coming by rotating the pelvis instead of squatting through the haunches. So yes, we could condition this, strengthen it up, and he would do well in a prelim test. But what happens when we then go to ride leg outs? What happens when we then go to ride shoulder in and travers towards collection and lengthening? We have ruined our ability to communicate with our horse through bit pressure. You're going to be fighting with your horse's mouth to keep their head there because it is unnatural to their posture, and so then we're going to end up with mouthing issues. And then you're also potentially going to end up with a lame horse because this is completely dysfunctional posture. So when we start working towards a horse that is working in true self-carriage with true contact, we're looking at having our horse seeking the contact, working through to the contact, and having hands our horse can trust. So Hunter is still working on developing that true top line and that true self-carriage. However, you can see where our angles are looking a lot better. His hindquarters are starting to build muscle and much more rounded out. If we had him at the halt, you would be able to see that his chest and his shoulders are bulking. He's starting to develop some top line and some crest here. And so then you can see when he is being asked to engage, he's going to sit a little bit deeper into his hindquarters so that we're transferring the weight and the balance into the haunches and getting him to flex deeper. And then we can put our hands together forward and down, and he works through to contact and seeks our hands. Then we're going to be using the outside rein to ask him to sit weight through the hindquarters. And so that's going to have unlock our horse's potential for moving up the training scale. The bit pressure is not about the angle of the neck, it is about the angle of the hop flexions. Because when you go to develop collection, when we're asking for shoulder in, we're using the reins to ask our horse to sit deeper through the hindquarters. And that's where our collection is going to be. That's where our impulsion is. If we purely use our reins for submission to the bit and to tuck our horse's nose in, then we're going to have the underneck muscle engaged, and so their balance is still on the forehand. So we're never going to be able to develop an uphill horse. And it takes time. It takes understanding how to complement your exercises in a way that overall develops engagement, throughness, top line, relaxation, and swing, and to have hands that your horse can trust. So that rather than kind of seesawing them or forcing them into a frame where they tuck their nose behind the bit, you want them to be actively seeking your hands for communication so that you can put your hands together forward and down, and your horses seek your hands for that contact, so that you can then ask them to sit a little deeper by using your outside rein to get the hop flexion. Or you can ask them to travel out a bit more into more of a lengthen, depending on, what you're working on. So this is the most important part about doing your flat work training to develop contact, to develop your working frame. It is about postural alignment, being able to stack our horse's posture so that our horses can sit deeper into their hindquarters. And then your rein contact is communicating sit through the hindquarters, seek the hands, instead of just flexing their nose away and tucking their nose behind the bit. If we do just tuck their nose behind the bit, we have no way of communicating sit deeper through the hindquarters. So then we have no way of communicating, more balance, more engagement, and how to build impulsion or towards collection movements and towards shoulder in movements. And so we can see the same happen in the canter transition. If our horse's balance is distributed still on their forehand, the forwardness is coming from pulling through the chest and the shoulders, then the balance is in the underneck. And so just tucking their nose away only serves to make their posture dysfunctional and make it harder for them to work uphill. The drive is coming from pushing off of the hindquarters. There is no weight bearing through the haunches. So just tucking his nose here is of zero benefit to him or to me. We need to be using our exercises in a way that complement each other to build both the strength and the suppleness up, to be able to have a nice open top line that can take the contact out, forward and down, so that he can engage his posture muscles. And when he does come up into contact, he's going to come up at the base of the wither instead of up through the pole, pulling himself up with his neck and grounding the forehand. Whilst his balance is on the forehand and in his underneck, just putting him into a frame is going to be dysfunctional for him and potentially lead to lameness. So this is why we've put our lesson plans together, and this is what we've been working on with Hunter to create a functional frame where we're going to be asking him to stack and engage his posture so that our rein aids can communicate more sit through the hindquarters, so that we're not going to get stuck in the lower levels of training in the dressage scale, and we can excel through the levels because we've got clear communication that can clearly communicate how to use his hindquarters. We've got confidence in the contact where he can seek the contact and know that I'm not going to seesaw off his mouth and create pain through the bit pressure. So that's what true acceptance of contact is, where he feels confident in my hands and I have hands that he can trust. And then we're going to be strategically planning out the way that our lesson plans, our exercises complement each other to build the strength of what we would call our push-ups, to build the sling muscles, and the strength of our squats, so the exercises that we do to make this nicely rounded booty, and complement it with our suppling lateral exercises to keep opening the top line out. So if you want that plan laid out for you, and you think that maybe your horse is too weak or too supple, or you're not sure how to work them up into contact, not sure how to have hands your horse can trust, don't know how to communicate more sit through the hindquarters, then check out our online membership over at www.equestrianmovement.com/riding for soundness, where we have over 15 different lesson plans on how to complement your training sessions, how to complement your exercises to develop a horse that is working uphill through into contact and has a good postural stacking and self-carriage, so that you can progress through the training scale through to collection. Have a look at the link in the show notes. Thanks for watching. Until next time, happy trails.